Hi, I'm Candy from Quilt Vine, and I'm here today to kick off our new sew-along, Diamond in the Rough. As you can see with these latest quilts I have here to show you, we have two ways I'm going to be showing you how to do diamonds. One way, we are just going to be using our fabric, just cut right off the strips with the fabric right out of our stash. And then the second one we're going to be showing you is going to be scrappy. So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of fabric that you want to use, we're going to make do with what we have. The first one I'm going to demonstrate for you is with just cutting the fabric as it is. We're not going to be piecing our diamonds. So with this one, and the first one that I showed you, was cut using 9-inch width of fabric, 9-inch strips by width of fabric. What I did was those are 1/4 yards, and then I took them and cut them down to 8-inch strips. So all we need to do for this quilt is 8-inch strips by width of fabric. This particular quilt took 11 1/4 yards. And the reason I'm saying 1/4 yards is 1/4 yards come 9-inch strips, and then I cut them down to 8 inches. But you might have smaller pieces of fabric in your stash. You could cut them 6 inches, or you could cut them 5 inches. As you can see, all we're going to do is cut our strips. So there's, my strips are running this way, so it's 8-inch strip by width of fabric. Okay, so if you're going to do that, I recommend that you have a bigger ruler. So what I did here is I have a big square ruler to cut my 8-inch strips. Okay. Now, if you don't have a big ruler and you only have your regular rulers, like maybe a 6 by 12 or a 6.5 by 12.5 or 24.5, then you might want to cut your strips 6 inches or 6.5 inches, because the idea is to make it simple. So if I only have a ruler this size, I'm going to cut my fabric 6 inches by width of fabric. So here I have a piece of fabric, so I want to demonstrate what I mean. If you're going to cut them 8, like I did in mine, here's my fabric. Okay, this is, I don't know, a little over 2/3 of a yard. So here's my selvage. Now, if I had room here, I would use my 24.5-inch ruler and show you how to cut it that way. But since I'm doing it in this limited space, I'm going to fold it up again and make sure everything is straight and even. So first thing I would do is I would straighten up my edge. And I'm going to turn it around. Now, if I'm cutting 8-inch strips of fabric like I did on mine, you would just take your ruler and cut 8-inch strips. I would cut it right there. But like I said, if you don't have a big ruler, maybe I want to do 6-inch strips. So I just want to demonstrate. All we're doing for next week is we're just cutting our fabric, whatever size strip we decide. This one's 6, I used 8 in the other one, and then the little one I'm going to show you, I used 4 inches, but we're just cutting our strips the width we choose by width of fabric. So we're going to cut our strips, set them off to the side, and wait until I show you next week how to cut your diamonds. Okay, but then what are you going to do if you're going to make this one? So you have your scraps left from last week that you're going to use, or maybe you still have a ton of other scraps that you want to use. So what I did was I took my scraps, my strings from last week, and I pieced them end to end. And see, not all my strings were the same width, but you want to piece them until you get all, say, about 40 inches long. And the reason I want 40 inches long is because that's about the width of fabric. So I'm going to measure like this. I'm going to say there's 20, and there's 20 more. I'm just eyeballing it. Remember, we're keeping this easy and fun. Nothing's exact or perfect. Now, my strip is not all the same width. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to keep my edge that's mostly straight all together. I'm going to fold it, and I'm going to fold it again. Now I'm going to take and trim it up so all my edges are even. So I'm going to trim off this edge. Flip it around. And straighten up this edge. Oh, it's going to end up about 2. It's going to be a little over 2 inches wide. Doesn't matter. Does not matter at all how wide it is. So here I have a strip about the width of fabric, 2 inches wide about. Oops, look, it's thinner here. So that wasn't good. So I need to cut it even thinner. So I'm going to take it again. See? Live video, always messing up. We're just gonna even this up again with the smallest part. Okay, turn it around. So now my strip is only about 1 3/4 inches. There we go. So now I've got a nice long strip about the width of fabric. Now I'm going to take several of those strips and I sew them together, long sides together. So the diamonds that I've used in that quilt I showed you were cut with 4-inch strips. So here's one, it was cut with a 4-inch strip. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take this and fold it in half. And I'm going to fold it in half again. And I'm going to trim it up to give me a 4-inch strip. 4 inches by about 40-ish. Straighten off that edge. Flip it around. Now I'm going to measure 4 inches. There's my 4 inches. So here I have a strip 4 inches by about 40-ish. And then I'm going to make a bunch of these and set them off to the side so we can learn to cut diamonds next week. So what if you did the one with us last week where you were using a half sheet of paper? Here I have this one that I used a half sheet of paper from last week. I piece them together end to end to end. It's longer than 40, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure about 40-ish. Now I've got a strip that is 4 1/4 by about the width of fabric. And then I can cut diamonds from this. Say you've got a lot of scraps and you piece a lot together. Here I've got a piece where they're all sewn together. And this one is about, oh, it's a little more than 12, maybe going on 13 inches wide. So if that case, I probably don't want diamonds that big. I could make 2 6-inch strips out of this. Like, you know, maybe 3 4-inch strips, you know, then it'd all be like this one. It's not rocket science. It does not have to be exact, does not have to be precise making your strip sets if you're using scraps. So our assignment for next week is to cut strips of fabric however wide you decide. My small ones are 4, my big ones are 8. So we're just cutting strips of fabric by width of fabric. Now you might want to ask, well, how do I know how much to cut? Well, the first one I showed you where I used the large diamonds, that one, the center of it was about 36 by 56. And then it had borders on it. The borders totaled about 8 inches. So the quilt finished 52 by 72, a nice throw. So what I did on that one was I had the 8-inch strips and I needed a total of 41 diamonds. So 4 fat quarters was just, or 4 quarter yards was just not quite enough. Would have needed, I'm sorry, I said that wrong, not 4 quarter yards. 10 times 4 is 40. So I would need a little more than 10 quarter yards. So you need 11 quarter yards. 12 quarter yards is actually 3 yards. So for a nice center, You're probably going to need about 3 yards total of fabric if you're cutting from your stash. Another option is when we're piecing these together is you might want to put sashing in between them, which is what I'm going to show you on my one with the little diamonds. So have fun this week, and let's get these fabrics cut, and we'll cut diamonds next week. Thanks for joining me.